We'll call the meeting to order. May we have roll call, please?
Present tonight, we have Kathy Moore, Darrell Lopez, Lawrence Wright, Curtis Gashlin, Kristen Swetland, new members Pat Sykes, and Emma Reichert.
Thank you. I'll welcome our new members, Todd Sykes and Emma Reichert. We're glad to have you with us tonight.
Thank you.
First item on the agenda is the election of the chair and the vice chair, since this is our first meeting of the year. I'll open it up for nominations for chair.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Wright?
I'd like to nominate Kathy Moore for chair.
Second.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? And then we'll close the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, no opposed for that, I guess. Okay, then I'll remain chair. The next, we'll open it up for nominations for vice chair. Do we have a nomination?
Chair,
Mr. Wright?
I'd like to nominate Mr. Lopez for vice chair.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, we'll close nominations. All those in favor of Mr. Lopez as vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Congratulations. Okay. The next item is approval of the minutes from the December 4th, 2018 meeting. Do we have a motion to approve?
I motion to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Swetland. Is there,
second it.
Mr. Lopez, a second? Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is orientation. Mr. Groot? Glad to have you back with us.
Good to see you. What I'd like to do, if you don't mind, is after you're through with your item tonight, I'd just like to take a few minutes and go over some materials, and then it won't take that long. If that's okay?
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay.
The next item then is public comment. This is time for anyone in the public wishing to speak to the board about any item before the city that's not listed for public hearing tonight. And we don't have public hearing items tonight. Is there anyone wishing to speak to the board? Come up to the podium, please. Are you by any chance the applicant for the deviation request?
Yes.
Your item will be up in just a few minutes.
Okay. Then I'll-
Anyone else wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Now it's your turn to come up. I'm sorry. This is the deviation request for 660 Bentley Street. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Bill Danker. I live at 660 Bentley Street, Oviedo. Have all you seen the plans?
All we have seen is what was in our packet.
Okay, I'm assuming that's the same packet I got in the email, which was just the basic information. It doesn't actually show the structure. Have they seen the structure?
It's all that they see is what you were sent.
Okay. The reason I'm building or asking for this variance on the back of my house is I'm going to be adding solar. And this particular slope is the only part of my yard that never gets shade. And the efficiency rating on the solar in that location is a 93% efficiency rating. On the west side and east side of my house, they get a lot of shade during the winter months. In fact, the east side is shaded until about 11:30, and then it starts to get some sun. The west side is covered all by shade by 3 o'clock. So I really need to have that particular area available to me for my solar system to be as efficient as it needs to be. And there's going to be about probably 8 or 12 panels there, depending on how they put them on the roof. It's also a Tesla system with a battery. Now this is going over the top of an existing patio area, just brick pavers. And there's a hot tub there. It'll be screened in after it gets all done. and it's a sloped roof that is at the 512 pitch in order to take advantage of the solar. That's the whole reason for having that structure on the side.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us?
No, other than the home association has approved it, and I got a document that supports that. And both my neighbors, they've signed off and said they're fine with it. My next door neighbor's swimming pool, his green area, actually goes closer to the fence than what I'm proposing for mine. And the person who's kitty corner to me, he put in a parabola area, and that's within 10 feet of the fence, which is still closer than what mine's going to do. And there's lots of trees around the property, so it's not something that's going to look terrible to the neighbors. And it's a full structure, stuccoed, asphalt roof, the whole bit. And it's joined into my back patio area that I already have that's being converted to a room. And that's about as much as I can describe, unless you have any more questions regarding what's happening with it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of the applicant?
I have a question. Most of the time, when you put solar panels up, they face south?
That's correct.
Right. And so my initial question was, the solar panels that you're asking to add, do they not all fit on the south elevation?
I don't have enough south elevation to do it, and according to every solar company I've talked to, they say I'd have to cut down all my trees if I'm going to put them there. And I don't want to cut down my trees. And my neighbors don't want to cut down their trees. So I'm kind of stuck. If I want to have the efficiency level that I really need, I got to have that extra area converted over to it.
Were there any other questions of the applicant? Mr. Lopez?
Yeah, how many panels are you putting out?
It'll be 23 panels total, and up to 12 of them will be on that roof,
On the side?
on the south side, that one particular roof. The rest will go on the existing patio area that I have in the back. That's in east-west. That gets sun most of the time, except for during the winter months where it gets some shade. And then there'd be 3 or 4 panels on the west side of the house on the main structure. Nothing on the actual southern part that faces the street, because that gets too much shade. It's just too inefficient.
Are there any other questions of the applicant?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Wright?
what's the proposed height for that addition?
Well, it's 11 feet 3 inches, I believe, is what I had on the drawing for my posts. And then on top of that, it's a 512 structure of over 13 feet, so you got 5 inches every foot, so that's another 80 inches taller. And that's if I do the full slope. I can compromise and do a gable end there.
When you say you do a slope, is it pitched or is it one side?
It's just one slope, one 512 slope that goes all the way. So it's like a lean-to type structure. If I do a gable in that area, I'll lose about 4 to 6 panels of efficiency.
Our typical way we look at deviations is there's got to be some type of extenuating circumstances, there's got to be some mitigative techniques that are used. The application that we came in, that we reviewed, basically didn't have any of that there was no or extenuating circumstances. There's nothing different about the lot that yours is compared to the other ones. And I want to be correct that, our report indicated that, when you did meet with staff, there was some alternatives discussed, there were some opportunities to meet with staff a little bit more, and you basically chose not to do that, and you basically said, I'd rather just go for denial, come to the...
Yeah, I got a little frustrated with it, so it was my fault for allowing that to get to me.
Because, right now, the way I personally look at it, right now, I haven't seen anything that demonstrates that any extenuating circumstances or the fact that you're not willing to do it, weren't doing any type of mitigative techniques to offset the deviation requests.
I don't know what I could do to mitigate it since all the other zones are covered by shade.
Well, again, there's ways you can work with staff. Again, that was the opportunity to really work with staff to figure out what would be acceptable that they would present to us, to to balance what we look at as approvals or denials of the deviation. So I was really just trying to get the answer is that the report, again, was that you just were wanting to come here to get your denial because staff can't deny it. It was basically had to come to our board because of the percentage of deviation is over 20%, so we have to be the ones that approve or deny on this. And I'm just trying to find out what your path is here, if you're still looking just for the
I would really like to be able to build it.
In your report, you said that you could move forward with the project the way you wanted to with your existing residents and stuff like that. So is that
I
still the
can,
case?
but during the winter months, I'm going to lose a lot of efficiency. And during the summer months, it's okay. The sun is at an angle that it covers it, but during the winter months, it's almost like I don't even have a solar system.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Lopez?
And I know that Lonnie's going to yell at me here for a second, but I also have solar panels, and I will tell you that you're not going to lose any efficiency in the winter months. You're going to lose more in the summer.
Okay.
My house is in an opportune area, and I have 39 panels. Just
Okay, that's not what the salespeople tell me, but then they're salespeople.
Are there any other questions of the applicant?
So my question.
Ms. Swetland?
Yeah, my question was similar, but I read the report differently. Did you meet with the city and they proposed alternatives and you said no,
We
you
did
didn't
have a
wanna do
meeting,
that?
and I did propose doing the gable roof so that it wouldn't be quite so high. That drops at about 30 inches. And it does look better than the big slant roof. But I can't change the footprint because it's just, in order to have solar there, you got to have X amount of space. Otherwise, it gets so little that it isn't worth doing.
So when we have recommendations, are some of those alternates that the city on the table? I'm just trying to clear up, I'm confused by what's happening.
We'll find that out, I think, from our staff report.
Okay. Sorry, just.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Can we hear from staff?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Madam Chair, board members. This is a request for the LPA board to consider the deviation for the construction of the approximately 254 square foot addition to the principal structure to be located approximately 11.3 feet from the rear north property line, representing a 55% deviation. This north rear setback deviation is being requested in conjunction with a west side setback deviation at 1.5 feet, representing an 18.8% deviation to the minimum 8-foot side setback. This would allow the structure to be located 6.5 feet from the west property line. This adjoining deviation is less than 20%, so it would be subject to the land use administrator's approval. The subject property is located at 660 Bentley Street between Hartford Court and Red Maple Court near Pine Avenue. It has the R1 zoning district and the low density residential future land use designation. Table 4.2 in the code requires that all R1 lots have a 25-foot minimum rear setback and an 8-foot side setback. The property is approximately 9,800 square feet, 0.23 acres. The property owner submitted a narrative pursuant to the criteria in LDC sections 2.7(c). Staff reviewed the application based on the criteria outlined in section 2.7(c) and found the following. In terms of the existing, the presence of special conditions or circumstances regarding the property and the building, staff did not find any special conditions or circumstances peculiar to the property or to the structure involved. And also the applicant's narrative stated that there's no special conditions. The applicant wants to enclose the existing 312 square foot patio and build the addition. Because of the structural nature of this building or this construction, it's considered an addition to the principal structure and not an accessory use to the principal structure. That's why we have to apply the principal building setback requirements for this addition. As the applicant mentioned, he cannot place the building elsewhere in the property without significantly impacting existing canopy trees or drastically reducing the efficiency of the solar panels. As he mentioned, this is in addition to the ones that he would install on the principal structure, and that the denial of this deviation request would not prevent him from installing solar panels on the existing principal structure. In looking at the pictures provided by the applicant, it's attachment 4, it does not appear that the location was served to protect existing canopy trees. It looks like they are underbrush or understory trees. There is a canopy tree on the adjacent property whose the branches of that tree comes off onto this property, as in the rear property line. Staff believes that alternative designs and placement of the addition could be considered that would reduce the extent of the deviation. We discussed at the August 14th meeting, we did discuss options, but he wasn't interested in those, and so we had offered to meet with the director. And when we did, we had asked if he would be willing to come meet with the director. He declined and asked that staff deny the application instead. He did mention that the addition could be a little shorter, but he also wanted the addition to house the hot tub, which, based on just looking at the property appraisers and measuring it from the property line to the existing tub, is approximately 12 feet. So the structure would have to be within the 12 feet in order to house the hot tub. Otherwise, it would cut the hot tub in half. Or it would at least encroach upon the existing hot tub. And he had indicated that it could not be installed elsewhere. In terms of compatibility, staff feels that the 55% deviation is generally not compatible with adjacent properties. His surrounding neighbors are all compliant with code with respect to the principal building setbacks, as well as the accessory structure setbacks, which is 8 feet on the sides. So the existing screen enclosure of his neighbors are within the accessory structure setbacks. In terms of mitigative techniques, we weren't able to arrive at any with him during the first meeting, but we were hoping to discuss options if he had met with us with the director, but again, that meeting did not happen. So we did not get a chance to come up with any mitigative solutions, and he did not offer any. In terms of environmentally sensitive areas, this criteria does not apply as there are no environmentally sensitive areas on the property. In terms of the criterion on whether or not this is the minimum deviation that needs to be granted, staff feels like there are other options that could be considered and discussed further if you were willing to meet with the director at that time. But the 55% staff does not feel is the minimum deviation needed to grant to allow the applicant to do what he wants to do. This application does not have any impacts on open spaces, and there are no other non-conforming structures or uses were used for in staff's evaluation. The city attorney has reviewed the application and did not identify any issues. And with that, staff is recommending that the board deny the requested deviation and issue the denial of development order. And I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Are there questions of staff?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Wright?
Couple things. The question would be based on any decision, pleasure of the board tonight, however we decide to move this forward, whether it's approval or denial. If it does go to the denial phase, can the applicant come back at some point and further discuss? I mean, is it a process start over again at that point? So he has to start from scratch beginning?
No, he wouldn't have to, right? I don't think so, Bonnie.
If you deny, it'll be a new application. So
Yeah.
to the extent that staff determines that anything is new, it would have to be reviewed fully again. So It's basically a new application. It is a new application, subject to full review.
Okay, thank you. Second question, this is unrelated to the new structure that they were talking about. I think it's on page 16 of our PDF. It's the DVSS site plan. Shows the location of the single-story construction building that he's looking at. The other question I had was the other hatched area indicates the back porch was also being enclosed for new living space, and it appears to already be in violation of the setback. So when a porch conversion like that, does that also require a deviation at this time?
If I'm understanding your question correctly, the porch is already existing, so I will double check to see because it would have been approved as part of the original principal structure at that time.
As a porch, but if it's enclosed as living space, is that change? I guess that's my question, whether or not there's a deviation that was required for that now. So that was my question.
Yeah,
So.
there might be, but it will be the less than 20% because it's very close to the 25-foot rear setback line.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Mr. Lopez?
Following up, Mr. White, if we were to table it, could he then go back and sit down without having to start all over again? That
Yes,
would
sir.
be the ideal situation, correct?
If the applicant indicated that he was interested in re-engaging staff, you could continue this, and the applicant could then work with staff, and there'd be a new staff report based upon the changes, and he would not have to start anew.
Sir, would you consider working with staff?
Yes. Do I need to go up there and say yes, or just?
You
Need to come back up.
Yeah.
The microphone can't pick it up otherwise.
Yes, I'll meet with the staff.
Because ideally, that's what we would like to see, you work with staff and come to a resolution. Okay. Thank you.
You could continue this to some point in time when you think you might be able to re-agendize it, whatever that might be.
I know it's always preferred that we continue it to a date
Well,
specific.
that's what I mean, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Sweet
So
motion.
when you know you're going to have a meeting and you know you're going to have it ready, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's either the 5th or the 5th or the 19th.
But,
It's possible that we can get it done by the 5th because it doesn't need to be advertised.
well, it won't have to be re-advertised.
No, it's not a hearing, so it didn't have to.
The issues are the 5th or the 19th, and the 5th is less than, less than 3 weeks, and the 19th is a full month. I don't know. I mean,
I'm retired, so I'm old.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Wright?
And again, the reason for me asking is, obviously, I think there's still some opportunity here for us to have some more information. The applicant has more information. What I was asking him before was whether or not he was pretty much in the report, whether he just wanted to move forward with the denial or give him an opportunity to go and speak with staff. So it's really kind of up to him to decide how long he has to wait or is willing to wait. So if he feels like he has to move forward, so we can ask him that question. I know he's sitting right there in front of me while I'm asking these, but
what
Sir,
what
would-
may help is, what's the agenda look like for the 5th so far?
We have one special exception.
I honestly just want to make sure that, if you feel like you have to move forward, then we need to make a decision. That's one way for us to look at it, or...
Well, I would like to get going on the conversion of the room. I've been working with the inspector's office constantly on the plans and everything in order to get that done, and I suppose I can amend or pull a second permit for the other part of it, for the solar, but I'd really like to get that part of it going and done before the heavy rains and summer come along.
So,
The staff is saying that the 5th would work, and you are going to have a meeting on the 5th, so that would be the first available meeting.
Is that, would that be acceptable for the 5th?
Yeah, at this moment, I have nothing blocking the 5th of February you're talking about?
Right, yes.
yes, 5th February.
Okay.
And that will give the director time enough to meet with him? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other questions of staff? Okay, what's the board's pleasure?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we suspend this app for further review by staff.
I'm sorry, suspend, or is that a motion to continue?
To continue, I'm
February
sorry, to
5th?
continue.
Okay.
The February 5th,
To
correct?
February 5th, yes.
Second.
Okay, second, Mr. Wright. Is there any discussion? Okay, we'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, so you'll need to meet with staff, and then this item will come back before this board on February 5th. Okay? The next item on the agenda is public hearings. There are none of those tonight. So, Mr. Groot, I think we're back to you.
All right. I'm going to hand out highlighters, just in case you want to use them. Even a
We get to color.
in there, if somebody wants one.
I'll take orange.
Oh, gross.
I already have one.
You don't have to use it, but I want it, plus
Will it come off my screen if I use it?
Yeah, can we use it on the screen? Yeah.
We'll take one.
We can continue highlighting what's up there now.
I have a confession to make. And I'm colorblind, and when I was in elementary school, my front part was traced my mother. But they told us to take these trees, and I painted them the way I saw them, and the art instructor didn't particularly like it. And then when I was in high school, I actually got kicked out of art class for something similar, because the art professor, Florida State University Development Research School, thought I was being a smart, what. And I wasn't. That's the way I saw it. Okay. But what I want to do, and the reason I gave you highlighters, because I have some portions of these codes highlighted. One's this. The first one, and we've done this before, but I want to do it again for a reason. Because, and I'm not criticizing the people I'm talking about, okay? But I had some heart-to-heart communications with David Pollock, and I understood that Mr. Minton, who I have a great deal of respect for, had some issues in comments to make when he resigned. So I want to go back to what you all are. So there's no disillusion whatsoever about what you are and how important you are. Okay? The first document is the state statute, which says why, not just why you exist, why you have to exist. State legislature says you have to exist. And now you can exist as the city council. Okay, and some jurisdictions can say we don't want anybody else making the decisions. We city council members will be the LPA. That didn't happen here. So there's an inference there at least that the city council wants some independent minds to think about things too. Okay? And now I highlighted mine from the bottom of the first page all the way through the rest of the statute, because I think that's the most important part of the statute. And because right off the bat it says, you, the LPA, shall have the general responsibility for the conduct of the comprehensive planning program. That's pretty broad and pretty big and pretty special. And then the legislature says specifically, you shall be the agency responsible for the preparation of the comprehensive plan. Okay? And goes on there and tells basically some procedures. And that's where it talks about the governing body may designate somebody else or another body to be the agency or make it themselves. B, monitor and oversee. Okay, general responsibility, responsible for, monitor and oversee the effectiveness and status of the comprehensive plan and recommend to the governing body such changes in the comprehensive plan as may from time to time be required, etc. That's what you do. You make recommendations, but you're responsible to make those recommendations, and it starts with you. And then any LD, land development regulations, changes to the land development code, you have to review them and say, in your opinion, whether or not they're consistent with the comprehensive plan. And then the last is perform any functions that the governing body wants you to do besides those. Okay? Now, the second document is from our Land Development Code, and basically, I've highlighted everything from 1 under powers and duties to the end again. Because this is the city council saying, this is what, first of all, we want you to do what the statute says you to do, and then detail some other things that you do in terms of public hearings, and tells you whether or not they're legislative or quasi-judicial. Okay? Okay. Now, let's talk broad first. You can make any recommendation you want as a body to make. Any 4 of you decide
As long as
what
we have
recommendation.
consensus.
Excuse me?
As long as we have a majority.
As long as you have a majority.
Right.
Okay? It doesn't, and Teresa and I have talked about this, and I don't mean to insult Steph, I don't mean to insult anybody. You can make recommendations that staff doesn't agree with. You can make recommendations that have no technical basis or underpinnings whatsoever. Now, it'd be nice to do it, to have technical underpinnings, you know.
Like trying to-
But you can say, we think there should be more parking, less parking, greater open space, less open space, without any studies whatsoever, just because of what you feel about your community. Okay? Now, staff may not support you. So what, quite frankly? Because it's your recommendation that's important. Now, it's important what staff says too, but you don't have to base your view of the city that you live in and are citizens of and are one of the 12 people in the city that make land use decisions. You don't have to base that on somebody who's an engineer or somebody who's a planner. You can just say, we think this is right. Okay? Staff may not support it. The city council may reject it. But that's beside the point to some extent. It's what you decided to recommend as the vision, as the desire, as the right thing for your city. That's why you're here. Okay? Okay. So you have all those powers. It's not that you, there shouldn't be any frustration. Okay? And now, in the list of decisions that you make, some are quasi-judicial and some are legislative. Legislative, and I don't mean this to be insulting either, do you think the Florida legislature doesn't make stupid decisions every year? By and large, they think they're right, too. But sometimes you go, dear, how in the world? You know, I remember the first bill I ever wrote. And I hope I haven't told this story, and it was about trucking of all things. And this trucker came, I was working at the Speaker of the House while I was in law school, and this trucker, Bobby, scheduled an appointment with me. And he said, son, that's a fine bill that you wrote. He said, let me tell you something, though. It just doesn't work that way. And he explained to me how trucks do this and that. And you know what? I wrote a fine bill, described things just perfectly, but it didn't have any real-world significance whatsoever. Where I'm going with that is, legislatively, you can recommend anything you want that you think's right. The comp plan's legislative, okay? So, venture out. Make the recommendations you feel that you can get 3 of your fellow members to go with. And then it will run its course, and staff may or may not support it, city council may or may not adopt it. But don't feel hogtied or that you have your hands behind your back, tied behind your back or anything like that. Now, in quasi-judicial matters, I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, and I got the same kind of drift from Mr. Pollock, and like I said, I think Mr. Tommy Minton's a really neat guy, brilliant man, but he was kind of frustrated. He said he thought some decisions put him in a situation where it was immoral to make the decision that you had to make. Is that right? Is that the word that was used? Something like that. What I think that meant, though, was that when there's a bunch of citizens who want you to make a decision and the code doesn't support it, that it's immoral to go against the public, okay? Or something. And that's not an uncommon view, okay? It's just not the way the rule of law works, you know? It's just not the way the rule of law works. The codes are meant to be applied quasi-judicially. You are the lucky 7 people who get to do it, and I mean that sincerely. You're one of the lucky 7 plus 5, 12 people in the city of Oviedo who get to do it. But when you do it, you agree that you're going to apply the rules to each case, and you just did that on this case, and you did it fairly. You said, "Sir, you really want to go down this path? Why don't you go rethink this?" Because the rule of law was set forth in the staff report, quite frankly. And you all hit the nail on the head. Mr. Wright, you hit the nail on the head. You know, this isn't supported by the code, sir. Could you please tell us why it is? And he didn't say, well, I don't want to go down too much in that case, but you got the point. Okay, so it's not immoral to make decisions that you have to make based upon the code. It might be hard. It might be tough when there's people yelling at you, but it's not immoral. Okay? And you have the ability to recommend changes to those rules, changes to those procedures, and all that too. Okay? So what I really wanted to say is you guys have a lot of authority. Oh, I know there's something else. Talking isn't action, okay? So if you want to make a recommendation, and make a motion, have it seconded, have it 3 other people support it, now you have a recommendation. But if you sit up there, and I'm talking about, if I was up there and I had the most brilliant thoughts in the world, the most brilliant ideas, the greatest concepts, and I just said it, and then I come to Teresa and said, Teresa, why didn't you do that? Why didn't you do it if I was up there? I was brilliant. Yeah, she needs consensus. And consensus is mathematical. In this case, 4. You know? So we'll do anything you want. We won't necessarily support it, but we will present it if there's 4 of you that say go do it. So and like I said, I'm not trying to hammer on Mr. Proctor or Tommy, but the great people. But don't be frustrated. Just, you have all this power. Just, if you want to do it, do it. If you don't, that's fine too. Now, the quasi-judicial matters, they will come before you. You know that, and they're always fun, right? They're always fun. That's why you love spending 3 hours one night talking about a storage facility. I know you do. So anyway, questions. But that's sort of a little bit of a sermonette, but it's for a reason.
Okay. The couple of times that I've talked to Teresa about making some recommendations, she's been accommodating. But if you don't express to them what you really want to do, it's for naught.
Teresa will take anything you say, any 4 of you vote on officially to the city council. Is that true? She may say, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. No, you would never say that. No, but she may say, technically, this doesn't match the architectural standards that are generally acceptable in the world, or something like that. But she will present it fairly. I know she will. Are you able?
Did you watch the video?
No, I haven't yet.
Okay. I was going to ask you what we did well and what, I don't know if you're allowed to tell us that or not, but what we did well.
Of course I am.
Was
I'll listen to it and I'll come.
What
I
was
plan on
handled
doing
well
that.
Because that was my experience in the year where it's been heated like that, and it was awkward between us even, just because we didn't agree, so we were getting frustrated with each other, and from my opinion, I don't know if everyone else was feeling that way.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, so if you
I'll listen to it.
if you can just share with us what was done correctly or well, or what could have been handled better by our part. Obviously, the public is going to do what they're going to do, and we can't control that. But city, I wanted to say that I did appreciate that there was law enforcement here. It made me feel much more comfortable. So thank you for that. I actually was walked to my car by one of the officers, which was greatly appreciated. So just as
Sad that we're at that point, but
no, but
I
it
know it's
made
true.
me feel more comfortable.
As you
and there was
alluded
like
to
3
a
or
second
4. I mean,
ago,
there were a lot.
sometimes when we have to make decisions based on judicial, it's tough.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it's not easy for us to make that decision, but it has to be made, and we can't circumvent the code.
No, when I was doing red light adjudications up in Palm Coast, I was the special magistrate. And at one time, actually had to have somebody removed from the proceedings, you know.
We were close to that.
And
At the
that was so
It's so-
stupid.
it's so
And
sad.
This is, you know what happened, ironically? The next month, when his hearing came up, because he was present and wasn't in jail, he won. But he wouldn't stop standing up and yelling stuff. And then, you know, finally, I said, Mr. Sheriff, Deputy Sheriff, would you please tell him to be... And he said, sir, you have to sit down. And then he said, sir, second time, sir, you have to sit down or I'm going to have to arrest you. And the man made the fatal mistake. What did he say to the law? What did he say to the sheriff?
Go ahead.
Just go ahead.
Yeah.
And then there's no choice at that point. There's 100 people in the room. What's the deputy going to do? He had no choice, except, you know. So anyway, I hope that helps. But that was my goal tonight, was to, you know, show you how much power you really have, and you know, it doesn't really matter if don't worry about whether staff, I mean, you know, take our counsel, of course, but if you really think, 4 of you really think something's right and is necessary for the city, make the recommendation. It'll go forward.
So Lonnie, in the things that we've talked about in the past few months about traffic issues and things like that, if perhaps we have a work session or something where we can discuss those items and we come up with some issue, that's
Now,
the
Bobby's
thing.
never been here still, right? See, I really think, and
I was just-
Bobby Wyatt may hate me for saying this, I really think it'd be so beneficial.
It's funny you say that, because that was going to be one of my remarks for closing, that we need to continue where we left off and have him show up, because I think he abandoned us that meeting. We're not coming. And we had a lot of questions that we did not get answered.
I think the person from Public Works who was supposed to have been here that night was ill.
Well,
And
Well, the
So
poor
not-
kid who was here,
Yeah, I was gonna say,
he was a
I-
numbers guy.
yeah.
He had all the numbers just right. What they meant in terms of Oviedo, I'm not sure the
And
link was quite there, but
I believe Teresa told me that traffic consultant has been replaced. So we have someone new that perhaps we can
so, but-
work
The
better
engineer-
with.
The engineer's been replaced, or the consulting firm's been replaced?
and then I spoke to Chief Chow now, and he says they do their own traffic count within the city.
but
Where
I
do
just
those
really
numbers
think, I think a work session with the Public Works Director
Please do.
and the planning interaction would be super.
How does it work to schedule a work session with this group? Like, can you explain more about like a work session?
Well, I don't know how, I mean, that's y'all's, you know, whether it's on a night when you don't have hearings or something.
I
Like,
didn't
how does it work to schedule a work session with this group?
We would schedule it on a night that we typically would meet if we didn't have any items. There will be some months where we don't have any items, and so we wouldn't normally have a meeting. We can do it on those nights. And the reason that works out well is that all the folks who need to be here are typically available. The room is available on those nights when we're scheduled to have meetings. So that works best. And it's more of a little bit more relaxed situation where we can have ideas flowing and have the experts here that we need.
We have, every night, you know, we have an open discussion item anyways, so you can bring it up then, that opportunity, or you can meet with staff, individually call them and tell them this is something we want to talk about. And there's a couple ways to initiate it, in a sense.
Mr. Wright's right, but I really think a collective group meeting with all of you seeing each other, hearing each other, and hearing the interactions between you and the city engineer, and sometimes planners and engineers don't agree on some things too. You know, that will be good to see. That's the joy of a work session, is people disagree and figure out why they're disagreeing, you know, and then figure out what they can do to agree.
Whether
Okay.
it's about traffic or it's about trees
Or about anything.
or whatever.
But I'll listen to the audio and okay? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did anyone have any other questions of Mr. Groot before he disappears? Okay. Okay. Thank you, Lonnie. The next item on our list, on our agenda, are discussion items. Does anyone have any discussion items that aren't on the list?
Well, I just want to bring up that we should have that get together again with traffic and engineering and all that good stuff.
Have a work session?
Yep.
Teresa, if we have a consensus for the work session, do we have a consensus to do a work session on traffic?
Finish it up, bring it to date.
If you and your staff can look at the calendar and see when a work session would work on our calendars and let us
Okay.
know.
Sure, and would be about traffic, so would be a continuation of that discussion?
I think-
Would you like to have any, questions, that I can, because I'm going to approach
Well, we-
Bobby White, the Public Works Director, to relate to him that,
I'd like to finish the traffic one. I don't know how you feel, Ms. White. Mr. White.
I think from,
Well, for my purposes, again, I was one initiated the traffic stuff the last time. So,
Right.
and in follow-up, Alani's briefing with us tonight, what our roles are, what we can do, and our assigned roles and regulations, is that we've seen the LDCs, we've seen the comp plans. We are continually making adjustments and changes that require either stricter or architectural standards, or we're allowing freedoms in certain areas to allow better developments to happen. The one thing that we've never done, though, is that our comp plan has devolved on the traffic side by just saying that we accept a failing level, to the point where we had a C and then it was a D, and now it's a D plus 30% or whatever the number
Yep.
was, which basically meant failing. So, my thing was that, based from my understanding, is that, as a board, we could recommend that we change our comp plan to adopt a level of service that is acceptable, and what the ramification, now, whether, again, staff approves that or not, agrees, council agrees, what I see that as being is that it's a first step for us basically saying that we want to be proactive in fixing something, because right now, we're not. All we
It's
basically
reactive.
say is, we accept a level that's failing, and anybody that puts something on there, it fails, and it doesn't matter. But if we push an agenda that basically says, we want to change our comp plan to say an acceptable level of traffic,
Right.
service level.
And my other reason bringing the traffic was because we have two new board members that weren't there, and I think we need to have that recap so they see where we're coming from as well.
The thing I don't want to see happen is I just don't want to see us go through the reiteration, yes, our roads are failing,
Well-
and that's our comp plan.
Well,
is that
Lonnie gave us marching orders.
Something to, in a sense, initiate versus just regurgitate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, Lonnie just gave us marching orders, so I think we ought to take advantage of that situation and go and move forward. Because we do have too many failing roads in the city, and yet traffic keeps going and going and going.
I mean, at the end of, and well, he's not even here, I'm talking about, at the end of the day, it says we prepare, we're responsible for preparation. We don't prepare the comp plan. Staff does that, and then we basically just get the report, we look at it, we go through it, we ask some questions if we can, and then we pass it forward, so.
we recommend approval.
So it's not
Right.
like we have, our own staff, or we actually do this ourselves. It's, it's basically an extension of what staff does for us.
it would be good to have a clarification what we want to approach this time, because the last time we discussed the matrix, right? So it was to understand how the matrix worked, and we had the consultant coming here. Well, to have a consultant coming here, we have to pay, and we have to have budget, in line to pay. The Public Works Director and us, I mean, that's a given, but if we need to have external, our external consultant coming again, we have to plan for that. If the discussion is to have a discussion on the levels of service, we are doing in a capital improvement update, right?
Well,
The element.
Excuse me, I would like to just mention a couple of things. The work session, I think, is a fantastic idea simply because of two things. One, our comp plan is nearing its planning horizon. So within the next 2-year time frame, we will be at year 5. The statute requires us to have 2 planning horizons. One is a minimum of 5 years, and then the second one could be 10 years and beyond. So we are approaching that. So the sooner that we can get direction from the board in terms of what policies may need to be reevaluated, that would be better. The second thing that I want to mention is that the statutes being the way they are and the definition of backlog facilities being the way they are, it would be, the conversation on traffic isn't simply just to look at the level of service standard. By definition, the statutes do not allow local governments to require development to pay for its impacts on backlog facilities. In other words, if we adopt policies that improve the acceptable levels of service, those roadways that are operating below that would become default or deficient. And the city wouldn't be in a position to require developers to address existing backlogged and deficient roadways. So moving forward with respect to traffic, I think that we need to, during the work session, really evaluate the initial intended tract of the mobility plan. I don't know who all was here during the time when the legislation came in, 2011 legislation for dense urban land areas and mobility planning. The policies are in place, but what we ended up not doing because the legislation changed again is that we didn't take the next step to actually come up with a financing strategy for alternative modes of transportation. So the fix wouldn't simply be to change the level of service standard. It would have to be more comprehensive than just that. So that would be something that we could definitely discuss in a work session.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Wright.
Okay, so I don't want, maybe I was correct. I don't want to limit it just because we changed the level of service. What I'm saying is that if we adopt a policy of the level of service, and then we basically cannot rely, as you said, we can't seem to put it on the developers to fix our deficiencies. But we have, as a city, have to develop a plan, an action plan to be able to mitigate to, as you just, and it encompasses all what you just said, how we're going to finance it, how we're going to do it, how long it's going to take to do it. But that's kind of the first step is what I'm saying. But right now, since it doesn't matter, if we accept a failing level, there's no motivation on our part as a city to move forward and try to fix something. So that's my take.
But I think the discussion has to be broader because we need to talk about multimodal, right? We need to talk about at what point we are going to start pushing for transit, right? Or a circular, route in the city that would, so it's not only the plus connectivities, right? So we are always pushing for additional connections,
Sure.
right? So to alleviate the discussion is not only widening the same roads, right, over and over. It's also to approve more mixed-use development, where people can leave their cars at home when they go to a restaurant. So and we are pushing for that. Sometimes it's not visible, but we have Ovido in the Park. We are pushing for more mixed-use development. We are pushing for more connectivity. That's something that we always try to request in our projects if it's possible, right? We have now discussed. I was discussing with Lonnie before the meeting started one cross-access easement that is being challenged, and we are trying to move forward with that one. So, and then what is the point that we are going to put a pressure to have really transit, right? A bus, a van system in the city, shared bike, stations or motorbike stations, right? So these are is a discussion that is broader, right? So what is Ovidu's trying to achieve, in the future? So I think it's good. We just need to understand, what is going to be, what is your main focus? Because before, I think we wanted to understand the matrix, right? So that was the main element. Now I think you have an idea on the matrix. We can update the two members on the matrix, but then discuss how to move forward with we have a challenge, for sure, because...
I would suggest, since we do have a meeting coming up on the 5th, is that we put together, at least individually, our potential items, direction, things that specifically, because like I said, just for us to say we want a work session, doesn't really have anything, because we have no agenda, we have no, this would give staff the opportunity to meet with our planning staff, our city, engineers, and come up with maybe a response, as to certain things.
Can I suggest, Teresa, you've been here through all of this. You've heard our frustrations at the traffic woes when we add all these new subdivisions, and we keep hearing it's okay because, if it adds 500 more cars a day or 1,000 more cars a day, it's okay. It's okay. That's all we keep hearing. And we're all frustrated because we're the ones sitting in the traffic and waiting to get out. You've heard a lot of our frustrations from that standpoint, and while there's stuff like we're not allowed to make the developers pay for it, some of that stuff we didn't know until you mentioned it at our last meeting about the transportation. Maybe if for our February 5th meeting, if you could have just sort of a rough agenda, because there's frustrations that we have about traffic woes, but we don't know some of the questions to ask. And maybe with your expertise in dealing with the traffic, you can say, you have to look at this, this, and this, and then we have a better idea of which direction we need to go at our first work session. Because we may think we want to talk about one aspect of it when that just can't go anywhere. Am I making
Yeah, sure.
sense?
We can help. We can help bring some kind of agenda to the discussion, and then
And we
in the
massage it a
end
bit.
part of the meeting, we can discuss again.
From that agenda,
Microphone.
then we can kind of pick and choose from that, those items.
And then you guys can figure out from there who we need to really have at the work session and go from there.
Okay. That
I
way.
agree. I think that would be helpful for some of the new members to have an overall briefing and have a good understanding of some of the city's position with some of the traffic issues, and I think that would help guide the discussion for sure. I agree.
Okay, good.
Can you provide Todd and Emma the briefing that we got when we did our transportation matrix?
The handout.
Sure, we would have
we
to
had.
schedule a separate meeting. That we can do that for sure. We have the,
Yeah, we can send you everything and then have a one-on-one.
yeah.
That'd be helpful.
One thing I would encourage you guys to meet with staff, at least talk to them before each meeting, until you guys get your legs under you with this. A lot of the stuff that we do can seem routine. And then every once in a while, some of it will start out routine and there's a monkey wrench in there somewhere. And it's always just a good idea to talk to staff before the meetings to find out. I didn't call you one, no.
Yes, you did.
But when you're looking at it and you're thinking, geez, this looks pretty straightforward, but then when you talk to staff, you'll find out about some nuance about this particular project that maybe isn't as straightforward as you thought it might be. So it's always helpful to talk to them. Staff's wonderful.
you.
I also wanted to point out that Lonnie had encouraged me to go to the Sanford Planning and Zoning meeting that they had. And it's fair to say that Sanford's a much larger city. And I believe that there were 7 people up on the board. And what they were discussing was horribly helpful. They were talking to an architect and a planner who was trying to put forth a subdivision on a substandard road. And what the people on their planning Zoning and Planning, they encouraged that developer to make changes to that roadway in order for them to feel comfortable going forward. They also made other suggestions about the size of the lots. Like, they went, I couldn't believe the stuff they were asking that builder to do. It was incredible. And so that, after that meeting, I met with Lonnie, and I said that was very eye-opening, because they were able to suggest, recommend, and ask for very specific things that I had no idea we could ask for. And so I just want to say I will be going back to Sanford's Planning and Zoning, their meetings. It's very helpful because, again, they are a much larger body and a much larger city. And it was very eye-opening. It was incredibly eye-opening. So I just want to encourage you guys to. I don't know if you've been, and if you have, I apologize, but it was helpful.
No, we haven't been on a road trip.
No, we need
We can do a field trip. Let's do a field trip. Anyway.
We would have to advertise, but
Is there any further discussion on the transportation work session? Okay. So we have consensus to move forward, then we'll hear from you guys on February 5th about a rough agenda and figure out what to do from there. Okay. Are there any other discussion items? Okay, our next meetings are February 5th and February 19th. And as always, if you know you're not going to be at one of the meetings, please let us know as soon as possible so we can make sure that we have a quorum. Mr. Wright?
What's that?
I will not be here on.
You're not allowed to take Tuesdays off anymore.
What Tuesday are you taking off? The 5th? I'll take off the next one.
As soon as after everything was said and done, then I recalled that Sunday. So that I got to meet with her.
You can fly out Wednesday morning. Okay, if there's nothing further, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Lopez? Mr. Wright? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned.